Welcome to the Coach Thyself podcast. It's the first time you're tuning in. CT is a podcast created to bridge the wisdom from sports to the broader game of life. Hosted by me, Coach Demo, and my guy, Max Lieberman. America, today on this episode, we're joined by assistant men's basketball coach at Stanford University, Jesse Pruitt.
Welcome to the show, Coach.
Hey, Max and Demo, thanks for having me, guys. I'm super excited.
We're equally excited to have you here. And before we started recording, you were just talking to us about what's going on in your life this week. So let's start off with that.
It's pretty amazing thinking about everything we've all gone through in this past year. You know, we haven't left campus and gone recruiting since March of 2020. And this past week was the first time the NCAA allowed college coaches to hit the road, and coaches from all over the country from every level were going out and watching players play with their high school teams. So our staff will be doing the same later this weekend, touching every corner of this country.
So, Coach, after the whole COVID era, what is the hardest thing to actually get back in that recruiting process? Like, especially when right now you just came off a big time recruiting year, picking up some of the top guys, one of the top guys in the country by Zaire Williams. What goes into that moving forward to try to get back on top?
You know, one of the blessings was Zaire had actually been to campus about 3 or 4 times before he committed. Same thing with a lot of guys in our class. You know, one of the amazing things about Stanford is this campus. And once you step on this campus, it's magical. And one of our biggest selling points is getting people out here. So not being able to have face-to-face interaction, not having that ability to show off the campus and spend a day with a player and his family, that's been the hardest part. And the Zooms are great. You know, being able to see them on this 13-inch screen and interact has been phenomenal. And I think it's something that will stay, you know, in this whole process. But that face-to-face communication, not being able to have that, has been the biggest challenge. And it's been really rewarding this month to starting June 1st, you're allowed to start having these visits again. So having families come on campus has been pretty special.
So walk me through like I don't know if it's a typical, but kind of that recruiting process.
Yeah. So obviously when the recruiting process, it starts with identification and figuring out who's who and who these players are. It starts with relationships. You know, our entire staff has been able to build relationships over the years as players, as coaches. So, you know, those relationships we rely on for people to reach out to us and give us names. We also subscribe to a ton of recruiting services that help us in identifying, you know, who those players are, who those high academic kids are. So that's the first step. From there, unlike many schools, we call the counseling office and get transcripts. Because most kids, unfortunately, like your height, they sometimes fudge their GPA a little bit. You know, I'm 6'1", but when I was in high school, a couple tournaments, I put 6'3". You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm 6 today.
People unfortunately do the same thing with their GPA. Obviously, they want to put themselves in the best situation. So we call the schools, that we build great relationships with the registrar's office and the counseling office, and we've got every kid that's ranked in the top whatever. We've got their transcript on file, you know, and that kind of helps us navigate that process and kind of really dwindle down who those players are in each class that we really need to get out there and see. And then from there, it's an evaluation process. You know, we talked about not being able to go out on the road since March. We've really relied on film. And I would say the majority of high school prospects these days have their games filmed. They've got parents, uncles, brothers who got a secondary camera on the sideline. They're trainers, they're AAU coaches. So you can get footage on almost every player. A lot of them uploaded up to YouTube or just send direct film to you as well. So that evaluation process, watching a ton of film, you know, and then doing this face-to-face. You know, we love, once you're allowed to, calling kids, FaceTiming kids, doing Zooms, trying to build that relationship without that face-to-face. And obviously when you can't face-to-face, the NCAA allows you 7 in-person contacts per year. And you know, we try to maximize that and make sure that we're hitting all those touch points. Then the fun part too about the evaluation process is because everybody is going to promote their kid. Coaches are going to promote their kid. We like talking to opposing coaches. We like talking to the rival. We like talking to, how is this kid's reputation? How does he talk to the referees? How is he as a teammate? How is he as an opponent? And really try to get a feel, because we're one of those universities, one of those unique places that kids don't transfer out of Stanford. So you've got to get it right. They're stuck with you, and you're stuck with them. So you got to make sure you do your homework in this process and get it right. And obviously that whole relationship part is big. And then the hardest part in recruiting, I think everybody can identify talent. I think we're all relationship people. We're all very good at building unique and strong relationships, but securing that commitment is hard. And that's the beauty of this business. And we find ourselves competing against the best school in that young man's region. No matter where he's at in this country, wherever he's from, we've got to beat the best school in his region, the school that he dreamed about and his parents dreamed about attending as a kid. We got to beat them out. And that's the fun challenge.
Coach, when you go out there and you guys are out there physically scouting players on these viewing periods, what exactly are you looking for beyond basketball?
Yeah. Beyond basketball, there's a word in our program that we use a lot, and it's invested. And what does that mean? Well, it means to do you care about others? Are you as happy about your teammates' success as you are your own? So we're watching how they react when their teammates score. If their teammates take an ill-advised shot, how do they react? Are they doing the open palms? Are they shaking their head? Are they talking to mom or dad on the sideline? How do they react to those kind of things? When they get subbed, do they go to the end of the bench and sulk, or do they sit up front with the coaches and other players, and are they engaged in the game? So you're watching those things, how do they handle adversity? When it's a tight game and they get a bad call, are they snapping at the refs, or do they have a next play mentality? We're watching every little thing, how they warm up in the warm-up lines. Are they the last one to get into the warm-up lines? Are they going hard? A lot of these are all-day AAU and all-day high school events. Are they picking up the Gatorade bottles left behind after, or are they leaving it for the next team? All these things you're paying attention to, because like I said earlier, you got to get it right, because you can't run kids off here. Kids aren't leaving here. It's a special place. So you've got to get it right in the process. So you're watching every little thing.
I wonder if people know how detailed you are in watching them.
Max, think how crazy this is. And getting a free college education is life-changing. Getting a degree from Stanford is generational. This changes your children's lives. So imagine you lose out on that opportunity because you were more consumed with the referees, or you were a bad teammate. That margin of error is so small, man. And I try to tell kids all the time, just do the right things, because you never know who's watching.
Never know who's in that gym. And the reason why I asked that question was because that's kind of the foundation. Basketball is built on that foundation. You need that strong foundation, their household, their habits they've instilled and developed. So now knowing that, let's say you have these kids with the right foundation, what you're looking for off the court, what are you looking for on the court?
Well, you want to see their decision-making. Are they making the right decisions all the time? We want to see them in a game with high intensity. Do they get sped up? Can they play at the same pace, no matter who's guarding them, no matter if they're being, highly pressured or guys in their face in terms of getting their shot off. It's really funny. Sometimes when I go recruiting down in Southern California, I'll bring a friend with me, because that's where I'm from. And I'll do the blind test. I tell the person I'm with, you should know by the first time out who I'm here to see.
Mm.
And if you can't tell, then I'm watching the wrong person.
Wow.
They need to be a step ahead of the competition. Like, for instance, a varsity player playing with JV, like they're a step ahead.
Yep.
And that's what a Division I athlete should look like when they're on the court with their high school team or with their AAU team. So you're just watching those kind of things. Obviously, their ability to put the ball in the basket. I think one of the hardest things and one of the biggest misconceptions when you get to our level is that you could turn a non-shooter into a shooter. And when I say non-shooter, I don't mean make or misses. I mean just mechanically. If their mechanics are broke by the time they're 18, 19 years old, it's going to be a tall task to really change that, because they don't have the time to spend in the gym like the guys maybe in the NBA might. So their ability to put the ball in the basket, their mechanics, and then you look at their physical traits. Their quickness, their fast twitch, their second jumps. How quickly can they get laterally? Can they get from point A to point B and then back to point A again? And then one added value that I think is really beneficial at our level in the Pac-12 is length. And a 6-foot point guard, but he's got a 6'3" or 6'4" wingspan. That player can be very effective despite only being 6 feet tall, and that goes up the line every position. So you look at those physical traits as well, and just the overall fundamentals.
I like what you mentioned first, though, where it's decision making, and that's kind of like the mental game, and that also goes to the point you made earlier about what do you look for off the court. Is the person picking up the Gatorade bottles, right, that are left behind? That's also a decision. And so I think it's really interesting to see how you can kind of bridge your decisions, right, doing the right thing off the court to on the court. And Demo used to tell me the lessons learned on the court make the man off of it.
Mm.
And I've always loved that, because when you're in a higher pressure situation, that's when you're sweating, and you can figure out how to make the right moves, make the right passes.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes so much easier to do it off the court.
No question.
And I'm kind of wondering, how do you teach that mental game to your athletes, or do you kind of expect them to already have that figured out?
No. The mental game is a big part of it. And when you talk player development, I think a lot of times you think about just the drills, and Demo is probably one of the best player development, best skill coaches in the Bay Area, probably all of California. But when you talk about it on a holistic level, it's everything. It's film watching, it's sports psychologist, it's meeting with your coaches, it's nutritionist, it's the weight room, it's this whole, this whole big picture to help develop these players. But one thing that we say to our guys all the time is be where your feet are. Be present. Don't worry about the game that's on Saturday. Worry about today, Monday at practice. Don't worry about the NBA. This is your freshman year. Be present. Be where your feet are. And that's something that we talk to our players all the time about, and really stress just being in that moment and trying to eliminate those outside distractions.
That's a secret ability. That's the ability that Mike and Kobe had. When speaking of Pat Garrity from Notre Dame, I always tell this story. I said he played with both of them. What made them great? Their ability to play in the moment.
No doubt. And it's hard to do. And it's something that you've got to work at. And it's something that as a coaching staff and as a program, you've got to talk about. You've got to point it out when they do it well. You got to correct it when you can see other things are affecting them. But it's got to be a consistent message, and you got to live it and talk about it daily.
It has to come from the program. When we talked about this with Alaric Freeman about Kobe and Michael, both of them were coached by Phil Jackson.
Mm.
And who knows what would have happened if he wasn't on that wave of meditation and have the program support it. But because he was there and he was about that, they learned those skills.
Absolutely. And as a coaches, you've got to be able to step out of this comfort zone of doing things the way everyone else has done it. And Phil Jackson broke that mold and did yoga and did meditation. And he was 3 decades before his time. Now every Power 5 school has a sports psychologist. Every coaching staff has somebody who's studying this mental side of the game, because it's from a performance standpoint, from a health and well-being standpoint, that's the next level in terms of coaching and developing these kids is the mental side of it.
Coach, I want to go a little deeper into your life and kind of the characteristics that led you to be successful. You know, and I see you as a successful father, husband, role model, coach. And what are some of the characteristics that you developed over the years of your career that help you be the best version of yourself now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I've tried to build genuine, real relationships. It's you know, in this industry, in this business, you're always trying to meet new people and you're always trying to recruit and you always think about advancement and all that kind of stuff. But I've been very fortunate to build real relationships. And it's fun because I got my start in this industry working the camp circuit. You know, and I've met a lot of guys when I was 19, 20, 21 years old working camp that are now head coaches, that are now doing so many great things, guys in the NBA. And just trying to build those relationships and maintain those have been really, really powerful for me and in my life, in my development as a coach. You know, daily things that I love to do is give other people props. You know, if we're in a staff meeting, if we're on the court, I always try to recognize somebody or something that was done that sometimes gets unrecognized. You know, if it's a manager sweeping the floor, if it was somebody that came in early because the laundry didn't get done the night before, but just always trying to say thank you and recognize other people. And something that my best days, my most productive days, are days that I actually write out my schedule. It's challenging to, I don't care how good you are, to kind of just wing it, and all of us have some wherewithal and savviness where, some days you have to, but my best days, my most productive days are those days where either the night before or in the morning, I write it out, because we all know things happen. A guy's late to a workout, your kid got sick, you do a marvelous practice plan and you find out 2 guys have a midterm they gotta leave early for. So if you're prepared, the old saying, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And those are, and again, I can't sit here and say I do it every day. We can all get better, but I do know for a fact my best days are the days when I do that.
Yes. Praise is free. Why not give it out? And preparation builds confidence. And the guys that prepare most likely are led to success because they're about their details. You're able to see details you never saw that come out on that paper. Right?
That's facts.
Can you take us kind of through your timeline from camp to Stanford?
Yeah, man. It's
to Stanford.
Yeah, it's a fun journey. So I was recruited to play to UC Davis, and this was when UC Davis was a Division II non-scholarship program, and everybody that played during that era takes great pride in it. Everybody has the Aggie pride. So I redshirted my first year. That spring, my assistant coach at the time, Greg Klink, who's now the head coach at Chico State, he pulls us in and said, "Hey, do you want to work a Stanford basketball camp?" And I'm like, I don't really know. I kind of want to go home this summer. I don't know if I want to work basketball camp. And he said, "Hey, you'd have a chance to play against some of the guys." At this time it was Chris Hernandez, Josh Childress. And I was like, man, that sounds awesome. So that first summer in college, I went and worked Stanford basketball camp, and I worked every summer for the next 8 summers. So wow. Mike Montgomery was the coach, Trent Johnson, and then Johnny Dawkins' first summer, I worked basketball camp. And then from Stanford, I made connections. I ended up working UCLA basketball camp. And then Robert Eson, who's now currently one of the assistants on our staff. He and I were college teammates. He had worked Maryland's basketball camp the summer before. And he was like, hey, let's go out to Maryland's camp because they got an opening for a graduate assistant position. So we go out there to work Maryland's camp. And the night before, we made a pact. We said, I don't care who's working this camp, nobody is going to outwork us. And Rob was treating this as kind of an audition, and we went out there and we busted our butt and we did a great job with the Maryland camp. Robert Eson ends up getting the graduate position at Maryland, became an assistant coach at Maryland at age 25. And he's been very pivotal in the doors that have opened for me. So step away from that. My first job when I graduated from college, after I worked all these camps, I went back to my hometown of Cal Poly Pomona and worked 2 years there as a graduate assistant for head coach Greg Kamansky, who was an outstanding coach. Later on, went a national championship with Cal Poly Pomona. From there, I knew I wanted to get to the Division I level. And Santa Clara University had a video coordinator spot open. And the only reason I knew it was open is because Matt Leshevsky, who was the video coordinator at Maryland, who I had worked Maryland's camp, reached out to me and said, hey, Santa Clara's got an opening. You should reach out to them. So I reached out to Santa Clara. It was a long, drawn-out process, and I ended up getting that video spot. So I was video coordinator for 1 year, director of operations for 3 years, and then I was an assistant coach for Kerry Keating for 4 years. I spent 8 years at Santa Clara.
Wow.
So during that time, Jared Haas gets the head coaching job at University of Alabama, Birmingham. He hires Robert Eson, my teammate, one of my best friends, as his assistant coach. They have great success. They go to the NCAA tournament, most wins in school history. Job opening at Stanford happens. Jared Haas gets the head coaching job at Stanford. Robert Eson is in the mix for the head coaching job at UAB. Rob gets the head coaching job at UAB. He keeps a couple of assistants. Jared Haas comes out west and talks to Rob and says, hey, I need some guys out here on the West Coast with West Coast ties, some guys who can go get it. And that was my connection to Jared Haas. So I joined Coach Haas's staff in 2016. We just finished our 5th year. Just an unbelievable staff that he's put together. Just high energy guys that do it the right way. And now going into year 6 as an assistant coach at Stanford in the Pac-12, it's been pretty powerful. But it's fun when you look back at it that this whole journey started by just a willingness to work summer basketball camps.
That's major.
That's amazing.
Relationships.
And I think when you look back on your individual story, you can begin to see how everything was connected. But in that moment, when you were going to camps and working these camps, did you ever imagine that out of all that, you would become, an assistant at Stanford at one of the camps you initially started at?
No, it's a trip, man. And a lot of those guys, 20 years ago that I was working camp with, they'll call me and text me and we'll reminisce on some of these great stories from working camp and us walking to the Coronet Hotel and us eating, from the taco truck at lunch and, just funny stuff that we were doing back then. So it's
the trenches.
It's a trip. The trenches, man. It's it's funny. And the cool thing is one summer, I think I worked like all 3 sessions of the boys camp and I didn't want to go home. I just loved Palo Alto. I loved campus here. I decided that, hey, I reached out to the women's staff. Can I work the Tara Vanderveer camp? And man, that was game changing. You talk about one of the greatest teachers in the history of this sport. Just watching how she taught young players how to pivot. She gave every camper a basketball on Monday, and that was their basketball the whole week. And just the responsibility and just the way she was passionate about the game with 6, 7, 8-year-olds was pretty powerful and something that will stay with me forever.
What was some of the major keys that she dropped? Can you give us a few? What are the major wow moments with her?
Yeah. So so think about this. and I've worked boys camps my whole life. And you think about this, if you gave, 6, 7, 8-year-old boys a basketball on Monday and said, when coach talks, hold the basketball, good luck. Right. It's not going to happen. You're going to have dodgeball, kickball, someone's shooting. All of her campers sat there, held the basketball, and listened. So that was impressive. But she said, when teaching how to set your man up, to set your defender up, to V-cut, to get open, she said, walk your player down to the block, step on the bug, smush the bug, and then pop out. So you had all these kids walking down, stepping on the bug, pivoting their foot, and then popping out, making a target hand. And I was just like,
oh, she's a savage.
So I used smash the bug even with little kids, and that was 18 years ago.
Give them something to visualize, right? Give them something to visualize.
My son gonna be smashing the bug all night.
Yeah.
Man.
When you kind of, as we talk about reminiscing and looking back on stories, and you've been with the program at Stanford and programs before for years, you kind of see players go through the process of kind of growing from freshman year to senior year. What do you kind of tell them, especially if their next steps aren't basketball? What do you tell them on their way out when they leave the program?
Yeah. Well, when they get here, I want them to take full advantage of what this institution has to offer. And that's all institutions. When I was at Santa Clara was a magical place. You don't want your kids to leave here. It doesn't matter if it's 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, wishing they could have done more while they're here. And I don't mean on the basketball court. I mean connections, meeting professors, meeting alumni. The power of college isn't necessarily everything that you learn in class, but it's building that network. And you want every one of your players to leave here with a powerful network and feeling this unbelievable connection to the university. And when they leave, if they've done those things, then you did your job. And you want to have an open door policy. You want to make sure your former players are welcome back, anytime they come back. But the biggest thing you want them to leave with is the idea of obviously being where your feet are, but also being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think the most successful people are willing to dive in and put themselves in uncomfortable situations and thrive in those situations. And I think, for me personally, one of the reasons why I got into this business and I wanted basketball to be my vehicle is to help develop leaders, is to get young men when they're, 18, 19 years old, send them on their way when they're 22. And hopefully you've helped them develop some skills that they will be leaders in whatever industry they decide to go into.
Major keys.
That's powerful.
Major keys. Preseason preparation. You guys got the recruits in. They're on the farm. For those of you that haven't been to the farm, it's a whole nother world.
Magical.
It's beautiful. It's magical.
Hey.
You don't even have to leave. It's like a resort for college.
Facts. Hit me up. I love giving campus tours. It is fun. There's so much history on this campus. 8,000 acres. It's unbelievable. But when you think about preseason preparation, I think the first thing you got to do is self-evaluate. You got to look at what did you do the previous season, what worked, what can you get better at. So first things first is if you're fortunate enough to work for a program where you have film, go back and watch film, study your games, look at the box scores, look at the analytics, see where you guys can tinker with some things and be even better, going into the next season. The other thing is study other programs. Think what are other programs? What are the other successful programs around the country doing that you liked, and study those programs and call those coaches and kind of figure out, hey, maybe we can add something defensively, or maybe we can add a wrinkle here offensively. Basketball, coaches, we steal from everybody, so if someone's doing something well, why not take it from them? And then you got to look at your own personnel. and their games and what they did well and things they can improve on. This is a time in the summer and the spring where you can really help, if it's ball handling, if it's the weight room, if it's shooting a higher percentage from the free throw line, is really diving into those things and help correct and improve some of those things that your players do. So I think the biggest thing off season is kind of the inward, the self-evaluation, and just trying to get better each and every day.
And I like how this could apply to anything. It doesn't just have to be basketball. It's basketball and everything else, right? Everything you do on a yearly basis. If you can, let's call it a season of business, right? You have your quarter one and you close and you want to do something better next quarter. Look inward. What worked? What didn't work? Study other businesses, other people, learn and implement new things. And those kinds of life lessons, I think, are super transferable from basketball to sales to education to even art, we'll call it.
Absolutely. And you also try to study, like, what were some of the road bumps? What were some of the things that kind of gave us a little hiccup this year? Was it, during finals week and just knowing that our guys have these added stresses during this time of the year? Do we back off in terms of the intensity of practice? Physically, where we are at our strongest in February and March when it really counts, so just really kind of looking at those things and, kind of try to plan out the season. You always try to be kind of 3 to 6 months ahead, so you really try to map it out and just look at, hey, knowing that it's not going to be perfect, but are we prepared when that adversity hits?
And balance. So 2 ways to this, one for your athletes and one for you as a coach. How do you keep balance in your life? Being a father, being a coach, being a professional, and also how do you help your athletes keep balance in their life between the books, their families, on and off the court? What are you guys' keys to success there?
No, that's a great question. Our head coach, Jared Hass, is phenomenal. He's a unbelievable father, unbelievable husband, and he really understands and values balance. He was an elite player at Kansas. Played for Roy Williams at Kansas, played with Paul Pierce and just some unbelievable teams. So he remembers very vividly that experience of being a student athlete. And he wants to make sure that our guys have balance in their life. So, as we get to January, February, we're not practicing 3 hours a day. Maybe we're going 90 minutes, but we're going hard and focused in those 90 minutes, so that the guys are fresh, come game time. So coach is really good about that. Having guys over to your house for dinner, keeping things light, but also on the road. We try to do different activities on the road, whatever city we go to, if it's dining out, if it's doing a team activity, just keeping the guys, keeping their minds off of basketball. It doesn't have to be basketball 24/7. From a coaching standpoint, you want to come into the office and grind and do your job and get your work done, and knowing that, hey, I may need to watch film tonight at home or make phone calls, but just really try to be present, at home and working for a guy that understands that and wants you to be at home. Dinner, with your family is important. I try to still have date night with my wife during the season. And if coaches who say, oh, you can't do that, they're lying to you. It's fake hustle. There is time. You just got to make time. And, just got to make sure you do that. And, understand when you do come home, be present, because on these road trips, you've been gone 4 or 5 days. Your wife's been home with the kids by herself for 4 or 5 days. And you've been independent. So as soon as you walk in that door, you got to take off that independent cap and be present at home. And if you could do that, the old saying, happy wife, happy life.
You can do that. You're flowing. The man.
That's it. That's it.
Be where your feet are.
You're the man.
That's it.
Be where your feet are.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, Coach Jesse Pruitt, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Coach Thyself podcast. I'm definitely going to take you up on that offer for a campus tour, because I'm trying to experience the magic that is the Stanford campus.
Hey, man, come on through. grab Demo. Demo, bring the kiddos, man, and let's have a good time here on the farm, man. This is a unbelievable platform you guys have here. I'm really fortunate, really blessed that you guys asked me to join today.
My guy, Coach Pruitt, man. Blessing to have you on.
Thank you.
Be